Devil May Cry is a series that is near and dear to my heart. The gothic settings alongside the stylish action and cheesy one-liners of the first game appealed to the wannabe edgy middle schooler that I was. And that's no joke. I'm talking all black clothing, long hair, and an obsession with death metal. I was cringy. Although a lot about me has changed since those days, one thing hasn't, and that's my love for Devil May Cry. Since then, I had consumed just about every story that Devil May Cry has offered, save for the novels. Yes, even these two. So back at E3 2018, when Capcom announced that it would be revisiting the original Devil May Cry series for the first time in 11 years, I was ecstatic. And then I mistook this guy for this guy, and I was wrongfully disappointed. Throughout E3, I was constantly reminded about this blunder. Whoops. But now, after 11 hours spent finishing the game, I can say that this game lives up to the standards set by its history, for better and for worse. This game feels like a lost relic from 2 generations ago. While this sounds like a bad thing, it isn't. There used to exist a certain design philosophy that, with the advent of newer technology, was lost. I'm talking mainly about linear missions that's littered with explorable pathways that requires creativity on the player. Devil May Cry 5 captures this aspect perfectly. Throughout the course of the adventure, players will see special items or secret missions off in the distance that encourage the player to explore the areas for secret paths. These always feel extremely rewarding to find. One difference this time around is that the structure of the missions no longer takes place in a giant connected area. The game this time takes cues from Ninja Theory's vision of DMC Devil May Cry. Each mission is treated as its own separate level, which eliminates the backtracking that we've seen in previous installments. I personally enjoyed the connected maps that we've seen in the past because the design made each world feel like its own character. This time around, I felt a disconnect to the levels, especially since the environments all seemed visually alike. While it was always exciting to discover secret missions or some orb fragments, the game never really offers anything more than moving forward and fighting enemies. In fact, it kind of felt like a beat-em-up sometimes. The setting of the first Devil May Cry's Malay Island was very memorable to me because of the puzzles and how everything connected. Because of Devil May Cry 5's fragmented missions, the environments are all very forgettable even though I literally just played through them. The players travel through these missions as one of 3 characters: Dante, Nero, and V. Each of these characters have their own unique style of gameplay, which helps makes the game feel fresh all the way through. Dante plays most similarly to how he played in Devil May Cry 3 and 4. He has access to a suite of weapons that he can switch between on the fly. These weapons have all sorts of variations of attack based on the inputs of the player. These inputs follow the trends seen in every game before, so if you had problems with them then, you're going to have problems with this again. Dante also has access to 4 different fight styles. He can use Trickster to evade enemy attacks, Gunslinger to use an alternate attack for his firearms, Royal Guard to defend against enemy attacks, and Swordmaster to use an alternate attack for his melee weapons. The amount of options at Dante's disposal is as grand as it's ever been, which makes the combat a blast to utilize as you aim to achieve stylish combos. Dante is easily the most fun out of the 3 playable characters. Nero plays most similarly to how he did in Devil May Cry 4. His fighting style with his melee attacks function in mostly the same way as Dante, but it's his Devil Breaker system that makes him unique. Players can equip a number of different Devil Breakers that each have their own function. One can make Nero shoot lightning out of his hands, while another lets Nero shoot his hand out as a small rocket, which he can ride on. The vast selection of Devil Breakers are joyous to use, as this gives players the ability to create their own combos and be as imaginative as possible. One downside I came across though was the inability to switch through Devil Breakers at my leisure. The game forces you to discard the current Devil Breaker equipped if the player wants to use a new one. Likewise, if the player finds a Devil Breaker during their journey, the game forces Nero to use the new Devil Breaker instead of being able to choose to keep the old one. It would have been great if the game offered more freedom when deciding which Devil Breakers to use. The last character that is playable is a newcomer named V. V plays very differently when compared to Dante and Nero. Instead of being front and center during his attacks, he instead summons 3 animal-like familiars to do the fighting for him. V was my least favorite of the 3, but he definitely has his merits. While his familiars dish out the combos, they can never actually kill any enemies. Instead, V always has to deal the finishing blow. This creates a dynamic that's a lot better in practice than it is in viewing. Because of this, I never dreaded playing as V, even though he is my least favorite. The biggest issue I have with him has to do with his controls. The control stick is used to both give specific commands and move V around the battlefield, and because of this, I would constantly get the two mixed up and deal out attacks I didn't want, or move V right into an attack. The combat between the three playable characters is, for the most part, exceptionally solid. This is further enhanced by the silky smooth performance of the game. I played on an Xbox One X and the game ran near perfectly at 60 frames per second. The only minor hiccups would occur outside of battle. The biggest issue I had with the gameplay though is that since this is an 11-hour campaign and it's split between 3 characters, I didn't feel like I had enough time with them to learn all there is that makes them great. However, like all previous iterations of Devil May Cry, the game is incredibly replayable. There's more costumes and both harder and unique difficulties to unlock. All of your progress is carried over into these difficulties, so there's no worry over learning any abilities you might have purchased within the in-game store. Devil May Cry 5 can keep players busy for a long time, especially with the promised free Bloody Palace DLC that's on the way. Devil May Cry 5's story was also incredibly engaging. I was more intrigued by the events happening with this game than I was in Devil May Cry 4. And is a lot more comparable to how I felt playing Devil May Cry 3. Although while I enjoyed the way the story portrayed newcomer V, there was another new character that I didn't much care for. I'm talking about Nico. Nico is a gearhead that is responsible for creating Nero's Devil Breakers. While Nico does have her moments, her sarcastic mannerism makes her come off as an obnoxious kid most of the game.
Do you have any idea where that's been?
Up your butt?
While Nico's portrayal is such a minor issue with the story, I do have a major problem with the way the game handles its ending. I won't spoil exactly why this is, but it needs to be said that I felt extremely dissatisfied with the events of the ending. While Devil May Cry's story has never been something to take really seriously, the previous games had never left me with the feeling of dissatisfaction before, and if this is the end of the Sons of Sparta arc, then it's a shame it had to end the way that it does. That aside, the game is an absolute blast to play. Whether journeying through the 11-hour campaign once or diving into the other difficulties, Devil May Cry 5 will leave you smiling from beginning to, well, almost end. This is a game that fits greatly into the legacy that was created by Devil May Cry back in 2001, and I can't wait to see what comes next.
Any more questions? Huh? Little cheeky.
Devil May Cry 5 is awesome. Even though the linear structure of the missions does hurt the overall experience, the combat is so fun and more than makes up for this little shortcoming. And with that in mind, I give this game an 8.5 out of 10. I do plan on making a separate video that details why I think the ending was a disappointment for me personally, but until that happens, don't forget to click like, subscribe, comment. You'll know when the video goes up if you do all that. And yeah, until then, I'm Ricky from Hidden Item, and I'll see you guys next time.